Look, I don't think it's likely that the US is going to change its position on statehood anytime soon, just given how hard they are. But, you know, you do see President Trump, there was reports on, I think, Friday night that he'd actually had a shouting match with Prime Minister Netanyahu over starvation. I think the pressure for the US to do things other than statehood, you know, whether it's withholding aid, sanctions, you know, pressuring Israel to do something serious about aid. I think those things are all still on the table. You know, if you have this event in New York, you know, in the president's hometown, where you've got, you know, hundreds of, well, not hundreds, but, you know, the majority of countries saying, you know, we are recognising Palestine. And that essentially the US is isolated as the only permanent member of the Security Council that won't do that. I think they're going to have to do something to appease world opinion to show that they are trying to get Israel to behave better than it has been.
I was interested in the Prime Minister's response to when he was asked whether or not this was just symbolic or what would happen on the ground as a result, and his response was, it's a practical contribution that's building momentum. Do you see this as more symbolic than practical, or how do you view the announcement?
Well, at one level it clearly is symbolic, but it is nonetheless a very important political move, and I think it does just restate a really basic idea, which is the Palestinian people and the Palestinian state have a right to exist and to be to self-determination. A really basic idea of international law and the United Nations, and I think that starts the process of just saying, well, if we recognise the state, whatever the governance mechanism of that is, it starts to put responsibilities on the rest of the international community to protect that state and its interests, and to more assertively intervene in that state when it's being, you know, treated as it currently is by Israel. So yes, it's very symbolic. Yes, it won't change things on the ground immediately, but there aren't all that many levers open to the international community to produce change here. So they've got to use whatever they've got, and I think, you know, the capacity to actually use this as a way of asserting not just Palestine's right to exist, but asserting the international community's interests in Palestine is going to be historically important.
And the mechanics of getting us there once it happens and it goes forward, that's very complex as well. The Foreign Minister was asked about that, perhaps ambassadorial roles where consulates would be held, etc. It's an extremely complex process.
It is a very complex process, and those are sort of the obvious parts of it. But, you know, if you're some person in Gaza who's, you know, moved for the 10th time and living in a tent or under a piece of plastic, you're not all that concerned about embassies, but you are concerned about the sense that the international community is looking for ways to intervene, maybe more aggressive in its, you know, in its support for international aid organisations getting into Gaza. Those are the things that are really, I think, going to be very important, and how the international community works at that, I think, is very, you know, significant. And I think there has been a lot of work going on behind the scenes about how you actually achieve something.
It would seem so. The Prime Minister outlined those many conversations that have been had over the past fortnight or so. Laura Tingle, many thanks.